Okay, so welcome to one of the final videos in this series, War Photographer by Carol Ann Duffy. So in this video, in this poem rather, a war photographer, which is someone who takes photos in war zones, is in his dark room. And this is, compared to the chaos and the noise of war, it's a very organised and quiet place. The dark room is where he develops his photographs. He places a piece of photographic paper into a tray, and the image begins to form, the photo begins to become clear. It's a man who'd been hurt in some way and whose wife is crying while the photographer took a picture. Then on the aeroplane to another job, he thinks about how his editor will pick a few photos like this tragic photo he's described, print them in a newspaper, people will look at them for a few seconds and then get on with their comfortable lives, while the people in the war zones carry on suffering. So the poem itself goes, in his dark room he is finally alone, with spools of suffering set out in ordered rows. The only light is red and softly glows, as though this were a church, and he, a priest, preparing to intone a mass. Belfast, Beirut, Phnom Penh, all flesh is grass. He has a job to do. Solutions slop in trays beneath his hands, which did not tremble then, but seemed to rural England, home again to ordinary pain which simple weather can dispel, to fields which don't explode beneath the feet of running children in a nightmare heat. Something is happening. The stranger's features faintly start to twist before his eyes, a half-formed ghost. He remembers the cries of this man's wife, how he sought approval without words to do what someone must, and how the blood stained into foreign dust. 100 agonies in black and white, from which his editor will pick out 5 or 6 for Sunday's supplement. The reader's eyeballs prick with tears between the bath and the pre-lunch beers. From the aeroplane he stares impassively at where he earns his living, and they do not care. So here are some ideas about war photographer if you want to write in a more sophisticated way about it. Try and write one sentence using the bold words to describe the poem. The first one's been done for you. The poem shows the order of the photographer's studio and the chaos of the war zones that he works in. So some key quotes then. The first line, in his dark room he is finally alone. Well, the setting in his dark room shows from the outset how a war photographer being a war photographer is a solitary job. This could be a surprise. Many might expect lots of action and noise in a poem called War Photographer, so I think Duffy's trying to get us to think again about this idea. The adjective dark implies how much suffering and perhaps even evil he has seen in his work. And it could also show how depressed this makes him if he's in a dark place. War photographers often suffer from depression, and Carol Ann Duffy, the poet, were friends with war photographers who had. The spools of suffering set out in ordered rows. This has sibilants, lots of S sounds. It shows how sinister his work is, observing other people suffering but not helping. It also emphasises just how much suffering there is in the world due to conflict. He's not just got one photo of suffering, he's got a spool, which is a whole roll. And the adjective ordered in ordered rows implies that he tries to bring order to the chaos of war, to organise it so people can understand. It could possibly also remind us of war graves, which are set out in rows. Each one represented a life ended by conflict. And then another key image, how the blood stained into foreign dust. The verb stained has negative connotations. Stains can't be removed. Like the atrocities of war can't be undone. The blood is spilt, it can't be unspilt. The adjective foreign shows it's not his conflict. He's almost intruding on the suffering of other people. And the image, blood stains, also maybe reminds us of Lady Macbeth, just like in Remains. This is someone who feels guilty, but guilty that he didn't help, not guilty that he has killed somebody. And that final line from the aeroplane, he stares impassively, so without being emotionally moved, at where? This symbol, the aeroplane, maybe demonstrates he's far above the suffering of the people he photographs. He never really gets involved. Perhaps also shows how privileged he is in comparison to them. In society, he is above them. They're desperate, he's quite comfortable. And the adverb, impassively, shows how he's perhaps desensitized to the horrors of war, just like some people in other poems. So those are some key quotes that you might want to talk about if you get this poem in the exam. And finally, if you want something to get your teeth into for higher grades, then this list, Belfast, Beirut, Phnom Penh, all flesh is grass, is very ambiguous. Firstly, it's 3 minor sentences, very quick one-word sentences, each perhaps like a snapshot that he takes, one in Belfast, one in Beirut, one in Phnom Penh. The caesure, the pauses here, create a sort of staccato rhythm, perhaps like gunfire. This maybe implies that he's part of the conflict too. These are proper nouns. They're the names of real cities. Belfast in Ireland, and then Beirut in the Lebanon, and Phnom Penh in Vietnam. And so this emphasizes that this is reality, this is the real world this is happening in. And the phrase all flesh is grass is from the Bible, it's from the Old Testament. And also it's used as an epitaph, it's written on gravestones a lot, all flesh is grass. So this war photographer is kind of like a priest, really. He's commemorating those who have died just like a priest would do. And so we come to the end of our series of videos. I hope that was useful, and please watch the others.